On today's show, the Rockets make no moves at the NBA trade deadline, and Rafael Stone says it just might not be our year. We're going to talk about it all right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the commentary and insight from Ime Udoka and General Manager Rafael Stone at the post-NBA trade deadline press conference that took place this past week. The fact that the Rockets made no moves at the deadline, appalling to say the least. Rafael Stone saying the quiet part out loud, just not our year. Talk about that, as well as the offensive identity of this Rockets team, how things will maybe change, maybe stay the same moving forward, as well as their approach to the buyout market and more. We're going to parse through some of the takeaways from that presser, as well as I've got some statistics and things that I want to share to back up or I guess maybe refute some of the points in the presser. We're going to get through all of that on today's show. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. And I'll be honest, last week with the fact that this Rockets team made zero moves at the deadline, didn't attempt to go get a viable point guard or some additional scoring help or guard help, what have you, or even potentially trying to replace the front court depth of Steven Adams, like zero moves, right? With where this team is at and what we've seen for the past couple months of this team. Following that up, like the messaging from the press conference basically being like, we're good. We're happy with our team. We're on track. We like what we see. And then for the team to roll out and have the egregious performance they did against the Charlotte Hornets and get smacked up and down the court by a Hornets team that looks like they know how to play offense. I was on the verge of crashing out, and I had to remove myself from talking about what was said during the press conference, at least for a minute. I wanted to address it, but I just needed to give myself a second to come back down before I came on the show and crashed out hardcore. So we're going to talk about some of the commentary from Ime Udoka and Rafael Stone during that press conference. And we'll tee things off with just kind of the opening remarks from Rafael Stone to come out kind of about where this team is, and kind of saying the quiet part out loud about this team. So let's throw it out to that clip first.
The process was really sticking with the guys we have. I think, obviously we talked to every team, we had discussions, but this year in particular, we just did with the way the cap works, that we're hard capped at the first apron. So constructing trades in the first place is hard. So that created one limitation. And then, just generally, I think the team's been very good the first half of the season, so we weren't looking to make change for change's sake at all. I think given the number of injuries we've taken, one thing we did look at was kind of like, is this just not our year? Because we do feel as though in kind of leading into today, we've had some of the worst injury luck in the NBA. But credit to Ime and to the guys in there. Our record doesn't reflect that. Our offense and defensive ranking don't really reflect that. And so we think, we like this group. And credit to Tillman, he didn't have an appetite for taking a step back. He definitely wanted to spend the money and give this group a chance to be as good as it can be. and just keep building and moving forward.
Okay. So first things first, a couple of the points that I do agree with. One, credit where credit is due, right? This Rockets team lost their point guard, a couple weeks before training camp and had to dive into the season without Fred VanVleet, a guy that was supposed to be a really big part of this team. And they have, it hasn't been pretty. It's been a bumpy road, but they have persevered without Fred VanVleet. Kudos to everybody involved. Kudos to everybody stepping up, taking on bigger roles, right? Amen Thompson, Reed Shepard, Alperen Şengün, Kevin Durant with the ball in his hands a lot more than he'd probably be comfortable doing it, but doing it by necessity, right? Point guard by committee. Next man up. Credit to everybody for doing that. And also for all the injuries that they have sustained, right? And dealt with. No more Adams for the rest of the year. Cool. DFS not starting until Christmas Day. Still not 100% yet from him. Tari, Eason out of the lineup. They all deserve a ton of credit, top to bottom organizationally, for being able to stomach and survive and get past all the adversity stacked against this team. Agree there. Also, shout out to the Fertittas. Shout out to Tillman for not taking a look at this team and a roster and a team that was, understandably underperforming due to the circumstances at play, and not pulling the carpet out from under them and issuing some mandate of like, we need to be below the luxury tax line, right? Like go make a trade to get us below the luxury tax line. They could have done that. They absolutely could have found like a cost-cutting move and jettisoned, DFS or Capela or whoever to try and cut some salary and drop below the tax line. They didn't do that. So credit to the Fertittas for that. What I will say though, and it's so interesting because throughout this presser, Rafael kept referencing that the Rockets are a top 5 offense, top 5 defense. On paper, sure. But this team is so far away from actually being a top 5 team, and they haven't looked like a top 5 team in a very, very long time. And here's the breakdown of it. The offensive and defensive rankings all the way through November 30th, Rockets were at number 2 in offense, number 2 in defense. They crushed the first month and a half of the season, right? They were awesome. They were 13-4. They looked great. They looked like they belonged in the conversation with OKC and Denver, despite not having Fred. It was awesome. Since that point, since December 1st, the Rockets are ranked just 15th in offense and 13th in defense. So that's about a 2-month sample size. So if you want to talk about sample sizes, first off, the first month and a half, 6 weeks or so of the season is doing a ton of heavy lifting for where this Rockets team actually ranks as far as offensive and defensive rating are concerned. Secondly, it's a bigger sample size now of the team being mid than being good. We have 2 months of data now since December 1st of suggesting that this team has just not been playing good basketball. So that is very concerning, right? And to reference repeatedly that they're a top 5 offense, top 5 defense, they have not looked like a top 5 offense or a top 5 defense in a minute. They have stretches where things start to click and they look okay for, a quarter or a half or even sometimes most of a game. But the weaknesses and the glaring issues of this team are very much still there. And the idea that this team was in a good enough spot to just hand wave and say, you know what, we don't need any additional help. We're good. We're happy with what we got. I understand, the first apron ramifications. I understand that it's not easy to put together a trade, but I also I really loathe the idea of just that whole just not our year mentality, punting on the season because you don't have Fred VanVleet and because now Steven Adams is hurt and things are a little rocky, right? I made this argument in a previous episode, but we have no idea what Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams are going to look like as early 30-year-olds coming off major injuries for each of them that required surgery. They might not ever be the same players again in a Rockets jersey. And that's concerning. And banking on, just continuity and the guys on the roster getting better, internally and growing as the season progresses and not making even a single move to try and go get a replacement level point guard I understand that the guard would need to have minutes, right? And that might shave into Reed Shepard's minutes or Amen Thompson's minutes or somebody. But when you look at some of the names that were out there and moved at the deadline, I struggle to see how there weren't at least one or two guys that could have been potentially not necessarily needle movers for this Rockets team, but just somebody that could have made a difference this season, could have still had an impact next season without giving up anything of crazy important value to the structure of this year's team, right? So from that standpoint, I think it was a bummer of a trade deadline to just watch the Rockets sit on their hands and do absolutely nothing. And now, we have to wade through what is, I guess, the buyout market to see if there's any help that can be had there. And they might not even be able to do that depending on if they want to retain JD Davison long-term because he's on a two-way deal, but he's running out of two-way games. So they might just have to commit to signing JD Davison to the final roster spot. And at that point, I guess if you wanted to, you could waive or cut somebody else and then go sign, a buyout market guy, but they might not have enough space under the first apron to even accomplish that, right? Eating the rest of somebody else's salary and then going and signing a buyout market guy. So the team that we see, the team that for the last 2 months has been 15th in offense and 13th in defense, that's the team that is likely going to be not even like that. That's the team you got for the rest of the season, unfortunately, because this Rockets organization didn't want to make any moves at the deadline. So that is disappointing in and of itself. Coming up, I do want to talk about the Rockets' offensive identity, or at least the offensive identity in the eyes of Ime Udoka and Rafael Stone. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every diamond, every board that much more exciting. It's America's #1 app for sports picks. Prize Picks is so simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections. And if your picks are right, you can cash in. You can choose from basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, UFC, and more. Plus, they've got features like early payouts and flex play, so you've got options while the games are still happening. And look, the way that Alperen Şengün has been playing this season with the assist numbers up there, picking points, rebounds, and assists and choosing more has never been an easier way to earn some cash on Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's go ahead and dive into this next part of the trade deadline press conference, where I wanted to ask about kind of the offensive identity of this Rockets team and kind of what we can expect moving forward from this team the rest of the season. Let's hear what Stone and Udoka had to say.
This question is kind of for both of you, but kind of back to the offense for a moment. Per Cleaning the Glass, the team is ranked just 22nd in points per play in half court, but 6th overall offense, in large part due to the offensive rebounding, second chance points, that kind of thing. How would you kind of just assess the overall half court offense to this point in the season? And do you believe that the offensive rebounding and second chance points element is sustainable without Steven Adams for the rest of the year?
We want to be better, but our offense has been very good. I think I talked about this past summer and last year, and I'll continue. There are no style points. So saying that like the thing we do better than everyone else doesn't matter. And I'm not saying you're saying that, but if someone would, that's not an argument I buy into. What I buy into is, are you effective or not? And we are, and we have been. And in terms of our ability to continue without Steven, since he went down, we've been rebounding at, I think, a 36% offensive rebound clip, which would still be #1 in the NBA. So yeah, I mean, the one thing I do believe, and I know Ime's been on it, but I expect kind of post All-Star is going to grow and grow, is like Steven's a bit of a crutch, and so Amen has been the best non-big offensive rebounder in the league in past years. Tari was in past years. Jabari's always been well above average. Well, get back to doing it. Like, it's great if Steven gets every offensive rebound and you can just chill. But we have really, really talented guys who can do it, notwithstanding the fact that he's out, and it just puts more of an onus on us to do it by committee. But I think it's part of to the extent that this group has an identity, I think it's a big part of that identity, and we should continue to lean into it.
No, I would say, we've had ups and downs on offense for sure, in large part the shooting. And, started the year off really well, shooting the three, best percentage in the league, although lower attempts. And, we had that rough stretch, when we lost some of the games to Portland and Sacramento. And so we went through our slump there, individually and as a team. And so when that kind of rounds back into normal numbers, I think obviously the offense will go up. But, we haven't had any drop-off at all with Steven being gone. Other guys have stepped up, and Josh had 7 against Atlanta, and we had 20 a few games. And so we want to maintain that identity for sure. But to my point yesterday, talking about the first Boston game where we only had 12, we shot extremely well, and we obviously want that trade-off at any time. And so offensively, whether it's Jabari and going through his little slump or Alpie going through slumps at times, I think when guys come back to their norm, those numbers will go up. Continue to work on pace and movement and ball and body movement in the half court. That's obviously going to need to be an improvement going forward, and not being a stagnant and dependent on isolations.
So hearing Ime talk about pace and ball and body movement and activity in the half court not being stagnant, those all sound great, and I really do want to believe him and hope that the Rockets are able to implement some changes, like some structural foundational changes to their offense. Because, for example, things looked significantly better against OKC. Like, that was some of the best offense that we've seen the Rockets play in literally months. But how much of that was a side effect of not having Amen Thompson out there and the spacing being mucked up by having Amen Thompson and Alperen Şengün sharing the court with one another, right? What does it look like when Amen Thompson does get back into the lineup and is healthy again? Is Amen Thompson on ball done now? Are they going to go back to playing Amen Thompson out of the dunker spot? Is Ime going to start tinkering with lineups and trying to play Amen Thompson and Alperen Şengün away from one another instead of having them spend so much of their time playing together? I don't know. There's different ways that you can go about achieving those things. And still finding ways to min-max Alperen Şengün and Amen Thompson in their minutes away from each other and in conjunction with one another, all that stuff. But first things first, since Steven Adams went down, the first game that the Rockets played without Steven Adams officially was January 20th against the Spurs, I believe it was. Since that point in time, the Rockets are the third best offensive rebounding team in the NBA with an offensive rebound percentage of 36.5%. The Blazers are number 1. The Hornets are number 2. And in the 2 games since this press conference took place, here's the thing. The Rockets have actually been out-rebounded both times. They were out-rebounded by Charlotte 46-40, and they were out-rebounded by OKC 42-41. Not an egregious margin for error, right? It's not like they were getting crushed by 5, 10, 20, whatever boards. It's not like how they usually crush teams, but they lost the rebound battle. They also lost the second chance points battle in both of those games. Against the Hornets, they lost that battle 23-15, and against the Thunder, they lost it 21-12. Now, they won the game against the Thunder, and they won in what is hopefully a way that they can replicate some of their offense moving forward, right? Leaning into Alperen Şengün, leaning into Shin Hub, really providing the spacing around Şengün and KD with the requisite shooters to be able to make the offense look functional. That'd be great moving forward. TBD on how that looks once Amen Thompson is back into the fold. But the idea, the premise that offensive rebounding as an identity can be your go-to offense is, I don't like it. I wish I could use better words to describe, but it feels so blah. Watching the Rockets try and muck their way through an offensive possession where there's no rhyme or reason, very little passing, very little movement, where things get stagnant, and then it just becomes hell. I mean, Doris Burke was on the national broadcast talking about it the other day, where the Rockets offense sometimes just boils down to how individually talented Kevin Durant and Alperen Şengün are. Maybe she's an LOR listener. I don't know. Possibly, because how many times we echoed that sentiment here on the show. And the offensive rebounding, while it's a nice like weapon to have, and it's great that the Rockets for so long have been the best offensive rebounding team in the NBA, it doesn't feel like something that is reliable, right? You know what's reliable is being able to draw up a play and guarantee that you're going to get one of your best players a clean look at a shot. What isn't reliable is praying that the individual talent of Kevin Durant and Alperen Şengün will be enough to carry you offensively. And if they themselves don't get the job done, then you have anybody crash the offensive glass. And albeit, yeah, you're really good at it. They're really good at crashing the offensive glass, but it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee that you can get that offensive rebound. You might be better at it than any other team in the NBA. It is not a guarantee that you get that possession back. Now, there was a point where in this season, right, the Rockets, it was basically a coin flip, right? They were hovering at like 48% offensive rebound rate. So it's like literally a coin flip. If they miss a shot, they're getting the ball back, which was really impressive. Still doesn't feel like something that you should bank your entire offensive identity on. And per those numbers, right, this Rockets team is a bottom 10 team in half-court offense. That is not championship caliber. That's not even play-in caliber. There are play-in teams with better half-court offense than the Rockets. That is mind-boggling to me. And again, you can pride yourself. You can be happy that offensive rebounding is a big part of the team's success and all that. I'm not trying to like diminish how good the offensive rebounding is and can be and how beneficial it is as a weapon. It's just like sharpen the other weapons, like clean up the half-court, right? Find some semblance of an offensive identity in the half court that isn't just give the ball to KD and Sengun and clear out. And we had Kevin Durant. You know, I asked Kevin the other night to describe the Rockets' offensive identity, and his whole thing was basically get two to the ball. Like that's their whole offensive philosophy is try to get two to the ball. He said that their best actions come when they run pick and roll, and they've got Alp on the short roll attacking the trap, deciding whether he's gonna score or kick it out for a shooter. Like. And hearing Kevin break down what the Rockets' offensive philosophy was, I mean, it's like, okay, like it's pretty simple at the end of the day, but that's kind of the problem is once teams throw a wrench into that plan, or once they up the pressure and the Rockets don't have a legitimate ball handler or a guard that can get them in and out of their offense effectively, then you start to see the issues crop up, right? So I get it, and like, they are a good offensive rebounding team. So like it's helped kind of plug up the holes and plug up the gaps. But I do not think that this version of this Rockets offense is sustainable long-term without Steven Adams. Like, yes, to Stone's point, there are a bunch of other good offensive rebounders on this team. But my whole argument is like offensive rebounding and rebounding in particular, it's all about effort, right? And in the regular season, yeah, you're going to catch a lot of teams who are just kind of like, whatever. Like, I'm not going to give 110% effort on a box out in the middle of February against the Rockets, who are one of the most physical teams in the NBA. I don't care, right? How many players are going to risk injury or risk their bodies, put their bodies on the line every possession, every single second, trying to make sure that they don't give up an extra few offensive rebounds to the Rockets. The issue comes in the postseason, when that well of offensive rebounding dries up, and when suddenly every team, every player is playing at 110% when every single second of action matters, you're not going to catch teams slipping up, not boxing out, not making the extra rotation, not making the extra effort to put a body on a defender or on an offensive player, trying to protect the glass. It's not going to happen, right? Offensive rebounding is just an effort thing. That's one of the reasons that you see so many like middling to bad teams, or like kind of those like scrappy playing teams. They lean on offensive rebounding because it's an effort thing. And if you can get guys to be bought in and playing hard and fighting hard and all that stuff, it can work to an extent, but there are diminishing returns on it. That's all I'm going to say, is it feels like there are significant diminishing returns on the Rockets' offensive identity being so heavily predicated on offensive rebounding. And as this season progresses with no Steven Adams for the rest of the way, I don't expect the Rockets to suddenly plummet in their offensive rebounding numbers, but it's not going to be as dominant as it was. And there's going to be games where they get beat out in second chance points and offensive rebounds, right? And in those games, where is their competitive edge? Because they don't generate a ton of free throws. They're not a great free throw generation team. They are bottom in the league in 3-point rate. Their points per possession on things like ISOs and post-ups are not great. They don't do any one thing offensively at an elite level except for offensive rebound, and they shoot the lights out of the basketball, but they don't generate enough threes, so it doesn't even matter sometimes. Who cares if you shoot 40% from three if you're only taking 25 threes a game? So what? You hit 8 3-pointers. Ooh, big whoop. The other team hit 14 on 35.5% shooting, and they were a plus whatever the math is, plus 18 at the 3-point line. All right, I'm starting to rant. I'm starting to crash out a little bit. That's my thoughts, my feelings on the offensive identity of the team. I'm curious your thoughts on what Rafael and Ime had to say, and whether you agree or disagree with my little rant there. Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Coming up, we're going to talk about the Rockets' approach to the buyout market this season. Fingers crossed that there might be somebody on the buyout list the Rockets can target. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years, and that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast, or speed skating races decided by mere inches, hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off. Even niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is the move, because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and locations. If you're hiring, you don't want just someone who can help. You want someone with experience who can jump right into the action. That's the great thing about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you're looking for. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through the mismatches. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's go ahead and hear the Rockets, approach or philosophy this go around to the buyout market. Shout out to the Podfather for asking this question. Let's throw it out there right now.
Rafael, you have an open roster spot. I believe you're past the point in the calendar in which you can use it and stay beneath the first apron hard cap. As you look to the potential buyout market, what needs do you see this team having? What's your mindset going into the next couple of weeks?
I mean, again, the team's been pretty successful, and our current rotation of guys, we've won. All have been big contributors to our record to date, right? Obviously, Fred hasn't played at all this year, and Steven did play a significant role, and we obviously miss him. But it's a big reason why we signed Clint, and we're really happy with Clint and where he's at. And I think, Ime's defense we don't play defensively the way most other teams play, and Clint's never played this style before. I do, even though Clint's not an age where I think he's individually improving the way, a 23-year-old is, I do think that there's meat on the bone for him to figure it out, to get better, to get more efficient within our system. So I don't know that we look at our team and we're like, oh, there's somebody who's being waived by another team that's going to come in and immediately impact us. But it's my job to do all the work. We'll take a hard look at the buyout market. I don't even know what it is yet. Like, no one's been, unless somebody got bought out in the last hour, no one's actually been bought out yet.
Right.
And so yeah, it's like the trade deadline, and everybody's like, what are you going to do? And then you're like through it, and you're like, oh, that's great. Like, relax. No, now what are you going to do in the buyout market, right? And so a lot of it is like, I don't know, kind of like I don't know what teams will trade. I don't know what players are going to be bought out, and I don't know what opportunities present. And yeah, we'll be aggressive in looking at it, but generally people only want to come if there's a role for them, and so that's a pretty high bar with us. But it's also but we'll see. I would say we're interested in it. We will monitor it. There definitely are players that 100% we would bring in if they were to get bought out. They're probably not super likely to be bought out, but you never know. And so we'll check it out.
Okay, so here, and I teased this earlier, but there is a problem here for the Rockets where I believe JD Davison has, I want to say it's 5 or 6 games left on his 2-way contract before he runs out of games that he's allowed to play at the NBA level, because there's a limitation on how many games 2-way players can play. And so with that, I'll be completely honest, my gut tells me the Rockets are just going to sign JD Davison to a standard NBA contract, and he'll be the guy who takes up the final roster spot. That's like the total bummer option, and that's like not the super sexy pick whatsoever. Now, that's not a slight to JD Davison. I think he's been incredible in his minutes. I really do. Like every time JD Davison touches the court, I'm impressed in how he looks and how seamlessly he fits in next to KD and Şengün, and how good the offense at times looks when he's the point guard setting it up. And honestly, that's kind of sad. It's not anything to do with JD Davison. Like, he's good, and I like him for what he is, and I actually do kind of hope that the Rockets just dedicate the final slot to him, because he's a great end of bench, third string point guard, combo guard that obviously can play at a decent enough level that he probably does deserve a standard NBA contract and give you some spot minutes here or there. If they can get him on a super cheap 3 or 4 year long deal, that's exactly the type of player that you want as the prices start to skyrocket on the rest of the roster, when you have extensions kicking in and other rookie scale contracts that you got to pay, and maybe you got to match Tari Eason's contract in the offseason. Sure. But it's also just that's the sad state of affairs, is where the Rockets are at, is when JD Davison's out there running the show, things actually look halfway decent, because they so desperately miss having a legitimate point guard who can get guys organized and set the table and bring the ball up and get them in and out of their sets and kind of, be the game manager essentially. And there were guys out there that they could have gone and gotten on the trade market. That's all I'm going to say. They could have found somebody to help manage things moving forward, and yet they elected to just sit on their hands. So that's frustrating. Of some of the names on the buyout market list, a couple of them that we talked about already, Lonzo Ball, Mike Conley, although it looks like Mike Conley's probably is headed back to Minnesota. I don't know if it's official or not yet. Either way, no Conley probably. Lonzo's one, but Lonzo presents the same kind of weaknesses that Amen Thompson does, because he essentially is a poor man's Amen Thompson, because he hasn't been able to shoot the ball in a few years. There's the Chris Paul pipe dream, but I would probably wager that Kevin Durant maybe doesn't want a Chris Paul reunion potentially. Also don't know where ownership is at with their relationship with Chris Paul after jettisoning him, for Russell Westbrook all those years ago. And knowing Chris Paul, or at least, my understanding of Chris Paul's personality, is that he's probably definitely a guy to hold a grudge. And so I doubt that he'd be, super open to a return to Houston. But you know what? And I can't believe I tucked this away all the way at the end of the podcast, but James Harden was reportedly open to a reunion with the Rockets. The Rockets had no interest. And I had poked around and I'd seen if there was in it, they were like, nope, we're good. And granted, it would have taken a miracle to be able to actually facilitate said trade. Again, and I very heavily doubt any way, shape, or form that the Rockets could have facilitated it and made it work the way that it would have needed to money-wise to bring James Harden back. But the fact that they just weren't interested in doing it, period, even though there was interest on Harden's side of things, is interesting, right? I want to know kind of, I guess, what is the goal then for this season? Because if the goal is to still try and win a championship, then I don't understand how you don't make any move at the deadline. And if the goal is to put yourself in the best possible position to win next season. Like if you're just going to punt on this year, fine. Rafael already said the quiet part out loud, maybe just not our year. That's okay. But if you're going to do that, then why not just give Reed Shepard 35 plus minutes a night so that he can work through his issues and kind of expedite his development, right? Because like that would make him a better player sooner rather than, the games where he plays 15 minutes and then doesn't play again, or he has like a small rough stretch and then he gets benched and doesn't play in the second half or what have you. Like the numbers are the numbers, and Reed Shepard has almost single-handedly led this Rockets team to some of their best wins of the season, and they're 5-1 with him in the starting lineup. Those are not fluky numbers. Like at some point, if Ime Udoka ever decides to just permanently stick Reed Shepard in the starting lineup, I think the results will start to speak for themselves. And case in point, against the OKC Thunder the other night, things looked really good out there, right? The spacing looked great. You had 4 shooters around Alperen Şengün. I can't honestly say if that might have been the first time we've seen 4 shooters around Alperen Şengün all season long. I can't for certain say that, but with some combination of Amen Thompson or Josh Okogie or Jayshawn Tate always getting some wing minutes this season, or with the love of the double big lineup to start the year, right? Between Alp and a little bit of Clint Capela at times and Steven Adams. Like, I don't think there was ever really a time where we saw Alperen Şengün surrounded and flanked by 4 shooters. And it made the offense look really, really good. So hopefully that's a thing that continues to be a part of the equation moving forward. But it can't be a permanent part of the equation because you got to factor back in Amen Thompson, right? And how does he fit with the rest of the starters? What 3 starters do you put alongside Alperen Şengün and Amen Thompson in order to maximize the floor spacing, right? And to get the best on both sides of the basketball. I still maintain that the Rockets' best option at some point in time, if they are ever, ballsy enough to make the switch, is, and maybe they do it post All-Star break, but Reed Shepard, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, Kevin Durant, Alperen Şengün. That's your 5. That's the 5 that gives you the best chance to win games, gives you the best on both sides of the basketball, and it gives you the flexibility to then run different lineups, right? Because if you're bringing Jabari off the bench, cool. Give Amen Thompson an early sub out and then bring Jabari back and sub him in for Alperen Şengün. Or have Şengün sit first and bring Jabari first sub off the bench and go to the 5-out Amen Thompson heavily featured lineup where suddenly the ball's in his hand and he is attacking downhill. Whatever you want. I don't know. But I would not hold my breath for a buyout market signing. There aren't really that many great names on the list, and I can't remember the last time a buyout market candidate was actually a difference maker, a needle mover for a contending team. But this Rockets team has a lot of questions they need to answer before they're even back into that contending conversation. Because again, since December 1st, 15th in offense, 13th in defense. That's 2 months of data. Those are not great numbers. This Rockets team has a significant uphill climb to be in that contention category of top 5 in both metrics. With that, I want your thoughts from everything we discussed on the show. How do you feel about the Rockets not making a trade at the deadline? How do you feel about the direction of the offense, as well as the buyout situation? Is there a name on the buyout market you'd rather see than them sign JD Davison? Because again, at this point, I'm just leaning towards just give JD the contract and call it a day. But also give him some more minutes moving forward because things look really good when he's out there. Honestly, at this point, I'd rather see more JD Davison minutes than DFS minutes at this point, because DFS has been almost a complete non-factor at this point in his Rockets career. So with that, I want all your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Even if you're watching on YouTube, go download it on the podcast thing too. Double dip. I appreciate it. And then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, all that good stuff. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.